Motivational strategies.
69 58.
Welcome to Professionally Speaking Toastmasters. My name is Abhijit. Before we proceed, everyone, please turn on your cameras.
Yeah.
Let me introduce our Sergeant at Arms today. Emmy, it's all you.
Oh, all right. So the agenda said you were going to do it, so I'm not prepared. What I am going to do then is just go ahead and lead the Pledge of Allegiance, even though I don't have a flag. Do you have a flag in the room?
Yes, yes. Hang on.
Would you? Okay, can't see it. All right.
Far away.
And it is, there it is. I see it. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
I'll
you
hold it.
so much for Elena. All right. So here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Emmy. Today we have our guest, Mario. Mario, would you like to introduce yourself? It's great to have you back. Thank you, Mario.
Hello, hello. Long time no see. How you guys been?
Very good, very good. Wonderful to have you, Mario. Come on camera.
Abhijit love the new haircut.
Thank you. In
All
our
right.
club, we take pride in our evaluations. We give around 4 evaluations plus round robin. It takes, you give a feedback of total 15 minutes. Helps the speakers to take their speeches to the next level. Today we have a fun agenda plan with 3 speakers. Please help me introduce our Toastmaster, Emmy. It's all you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. All right. Today's going to be an exciting meeting. We have 3 speakers, and the very first one should be a lot of fun because it's a icebreaker. I love icebreakers. But before we get to that, let's see. Our timer is Joanna. Joanna, can you show us what you're going to be using for timing material?
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Emmy, for that. Hopefully I'm coming up. No? Can you see me?
No.
Talk some more.
All right, so I guess I have to talk some more, maybe a little louder.
Ah,
You see me now? Right on. So I have cards that I'll be using this evening. So the green card will be at the minimum amount of time, and this is 4 to 6 minutes. At 4 minutes, you'll see the green card. At 5 minutes, you'll see the yellow card. And at 6, you'll see the red card, and it will remain up for the duration. You have a 30-second grace period for the icebreaker.
okay. So I have a
Is there any
question.
way you could put that in front of a camera lens so it's more visible? I think that Karen's going to have trouble seeing that.
Yeah, I can't see what
I
she's
can
holding.
get closer. That doesn't mean that the owl's going to pick it up any better. So this is,
Oh, yeah. That is
I can't see the
better.
color.
You still can't see it?
Can't see the color.
Looks kind of black.
Yeah.
okay. Then I'll have to sign in digitally to be able to do the backgrounds. So give me.
Okay, we'll give you a minute to do that.
Yeah.
In the meantime, as president, I have put the agenda in the chat. So if you need to make a copy of the agenda for yourself, it's there in the chat. And while we're waiting for Joanna to get.
Emmy?
Yes.
Elena will show the actual backgrounds. You'll see them at the bottom.
Great.
There we go.
Is there any way to put a hand raise to get you to the, can you do that with the,
Doing it now.
okay, great. So she's going to raise the hand so that the timer will be in the upper left corner of the screen for you, Karen.
Oh, great.
So there we go. Can you see the timer?
No. Oh, here's a blue and it has Elena Brenna under it. I wasn't expecting
Yes, that's right.
I'll change my name to time.
that.
There it says timer. How's that? Okay. Now that we have our timer in place, we know we can hear you and you can see the timer. So let's go ahead and get this started. Karen is our
Yes.
first speaker tonight, and she is getting ready to do an icebreaker for her visionary communication pathway. She says she earned her DTM in 2007 in Tucson, Arizona. She joined an advanced club immediately, but found that it was more of a talking club led by some Toastmaster veterans who had been her mentors as she obtained her DTM. The question, what do I do next, was never really addressed. The advanced club met at 6 a.m. in the morning. She did have the credentials to do paid guest speeches, Sunday talks, in New Thought spiritual centers whenever she had an opportunity. She spent 3.5 months. I like that. 3.5 months
3.5.
in Port Angeles, Unity of the Olympics, teaching and talking the summer of 2017, and moved to Port Townsend in the fall of 21. Now she's turning to more secular subjects and dusting off her DTM with the accredited speaker as her new goal. She has accepted the office of VPPR at our club. Whether she is a student, a writer, an educator, a volunteer community leader, or a real estate broker, an entrepreneur, her insightful utilization of language and graphics has motivated and inspired others. Her goal tonight is to entertain you with bits and pieces of her childhood in a Midwestern rural area in the 40s and 50s. Here she is now. Please welcome Karen King with her project titled Hair Raising Experiences. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. And thank you for getting this meeting together so smoothly. It seems like we always have a few things we have to do beforehand. Tonight, the title of my talk is Hair-Raising Experiences. And I think it's a play upon words, or a pun. And we had a lesson on humor and writing puns. I've never been able to write a pun, but they come to me automatically sometimes. One of the things that I wanted to tell you too is that I'm really excited about the new pathway that I'm going on. And I know I'll get a lot out of it, and I'll get a lot out of being with this club. So, and I do have a slideshow for you tonight that has some pictures that will help us all. So I'm going to turn on the share screen right now and play the slides. Okay, are you seeing the first slide, Hair-Raising Experiences? Okay, I had somebody working on that one to make sure it was right. Okay. For some reason, these aren't showing.
No. Perfect. Yeah.
Well, we'll just start on slide 3. I had a picture of me as a 1-year-old with super curly Shirley Temple curls that I wanted to show you, but we're going to do without that. I grew up in Eureka, Kansas. There's a Eureka, California. There's many places that have the name Eureka, but this town of 4,500 people was located in the Flint Hills of Kansas, a beautiful area. And the main products were cattle and crops and oil. My parents were old enough to be my grandparents when I was born. And all the relatives would come to see us and just stare at me like I did when I went to see my granddaughter in Florida. It had been 14 years before we'd had a baby in the family. And all we did was sit around and watch the baby. And that's what they did with me. So I became very self-conscious. If a hair was out of place, somebody put it back. If my pinafore strap slipped, someone would put it back. There was always someone there watching me constantly. But it was a good place to live. As you can see, things were a little rough around the edges. And the reason they were rough around the edges is because this picture was snapped in post-World War II. But my parents bought the farm during World War II. And when we were there, we lived a very green life. In modern terms, we were farm to table. We raised our own food and raised our own cattle, and everything was just very basic. We were living a third world life in a 3-generation family. My 2 brothers who were born in the 20s, my parents who were born in the early 1900s, and me on the cusp of the baby boom. It was a great life. As you can see, I had a lot of freedom. I wandered around on 80 acres, building houses, doing all kinds of projects, mulberry pies, everything. And if my mother wanted to know where I was, these 2 dogs were always following me. Life was simple back then. I don't know how simple it would. I question that word. My friend said, "Oh, life was simple. You had a good life." I said, "Well, without electricity and without running water, it was not simple." But one of the things that was always a big problem was my hair. It grew down to waist length. And my mother was very proud of it. All of her friends used to compliment her on how good my hair looked. And one time when we came home from shopping and did the Saturday night hair wash, she mentioned to me when they were pumping the cold water over my head, and the messy shampoo and no cream rinse. There were, it was just a nightmare experience every time my mother and I got together to wash my hair on Saturday night. And one time my mother mentioned, she said, "You know what? I think we'll cut your hair shoulder length." And what happened? I went down behind the sofa, grabbed a hank of hair, and had my mother's sewing scissors and cut my hair off shoulder length. She walked in the room and screamed, literally, "Susie, what have you done?" That started a whole new way of doing things with my hair. It was my mother's version. Oh, okay. my mother decided that she would book me in at Eva Boone's hair salon and get me a perm. Now, this was post-World War II, and they were still using the devices that looked like a dome and then had the wires coming down that hooked to the head. I walked in, Eva Boone stacked 3 Sears catalogs up on the chair and started attaching me to that monstrosity that looked more like an octopus than anything that would make my curls. One of the things that when she turned the heat on, all hell broke loose. The salon perm, the octopus, was warming up, and solution was pouring down my back and over my ears and down my forehead. And I thought, I've got to make it through this. I've got to make it through this. And I didn't. I started screaming. Eva and Mom released me from the device. My mother took me out on the sidewalk, and she knelt down, one knee and one arm, one knee on the sidewalk and one arm around me. And she said, whispered in my ear, Susie, you got to stop screaming like this. The sheriff's office is right next door. I was sobbing. Even the men that were playing dominoes at the hotel came out because of the noise. My father was in that group, and he got the car and took us home. That was the worst experience in my life, but there were worst experiences. What happened next was the home perms. Once I started to school, my hair finally grew out to shoulder length. And once I started to school picture taking started. And my mother, let's see if I can get this slide. Oh gosh. There's the monstrosity they had on my head. And let's see if we can get to the other one. The next thing was the home perm. The home perm was something that was just the worst thing in the world. It came in a box, and it had some solution and the permanent solution and and then it also had, a cream rinse. It was done by Richard Hudnett, and she showed me the ad in the magazine, and it was geared toward mothers who wanted their daughters to have curls. Beautiful curls. The next morning, I woke up, and my mother had wrapped my hair that had been rinsed in a wool scarf, Rosie Riveter style. And we took it out, and this hair was slightly damp. She did the best she could with, taming the fuzz, pulling it back, adding barrettes and a bow, and off I went to school for my 2nd grade picture. That went on through 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, and I took it lying down. We're in the 8th.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're at 9 minutes. I know you can't see the timer the way you're set up.
No, I can't see it. Yes. Anyway, I went to the barber shop and talked to the barber. He knew me. And I said, look at this picture. It is a magazine picture of Audrey Hepburn. I said, that's the haircut I want. So he cut my hair. And it was beautiful. It looked just like Audrey Hepburn's pixie cut. And the wonderful thing about it, my mother could not put rollers in it. No more perms. And just one thing I know from this lesson, there are no bad hair days. There's only opportunities to accessorize. And one of the things that I learned most from these experiences was that I can make changes in my life, and I do not have to accept other people's ideas of beauty. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Karen. All right. Madam Timer, we have 2 minutes on the clock for the evaluators and for people to send messages to Karen. Okay, thank you, Madam Timer. We're ready for evaluations, the most exciting part of the meeting. All right. For our evaluators for Karen's speech, we will have Abhijit Joshi on the manual, Sandra Kolb on the visual, Linda Wu on the vocals, and content will be handled by Hazel Brown. And remember, after you give your evaluations, to hand off to the next evaluator. So go for it, Abhijit.
Karen, when I was young, I used to go to my grandparents' house. And in their village, we had this dog I used to play with. And when I saw your pictures, your slides, it reminded me of my childhood days. So thank you for sharing your story with us. There are many things you did effectively. The first thing which I really enjoyed was learning about Eureka, Kansas. It was the ideas, the things which you shared where I was taking in, like the first thing you said, it was without electricity, sometimes without running water. I would not have imagined that. So thank you for sharing with us. The second thing I really enjoyed was the adventures you had with your hair. And that something was a hook for me because as you're describing the way you were describing with your emotions, I felt very engrossed with that. The third thing I really enjoyed was your slides. They were beautiful pictures, especially the hair ones. I would have never imagined that. It feels like it is from the 2200th century. It looks so different. Here are things you could do to make your speech more effective. The first thing is, I feel whenever we speak, the first sentence is very important. So if we can directly start your speech rather than telling your title and stuff, because we already know that that will make your start very effective. The second thing is, I promise to help you with the slides. That's one thing which I felt that I should have done. I forgot about that, so sorry about that. Whenever we give an icebreaker, it gives a chance for us to learn about you. And I felt that you completed that purpose of your icebreaker. To sum up, the first thing to make your speech more effective, start your speech immediately so that it captures us. Things you did very effectively is telling us about your Kansas, sharing your adventures with your hair, and finally, showing those beautiful pictures which helped us to imagine how things were. And thank you for sharing your icebreaker with us because it helped us to learn about you. Now I will give it to our next evaluator, Sandra.
Thank you so much, Abhijit, and thank you, Karen, for your speech. I'm your visual evaluator, and I would just say the greatest visual for me was your beautiful smile and your very expressive face. I could see your emotions throughout your speech as they matched your content, and the impact of your stories upon yourself portrayed the impact onto me. I will talk about your physical attire, the eye contact predominantly, and the props. What I really liked about your physical attire was that you wore a neutral toned top that blended into your background and also matched your hair. I could tell that you carefully thought that out and you planned your visual look, your visual attire for this special occasion. It looked very polished. Now, I know not everyone appreciates a blurred black background, but I do, and I thought it worked well for this purpose at this speech at this time. In terms of eye contact, I saw that when you came into the point where you weren't using slides, you spoke more from the heart, from your stories, which enhanced your eye contact. You were more on camera at those points. I know it's very challenging to keep your eyes on the camera, but it's that camera, that's your eye contact with your audience everywhere on the screen and also within the hybrid meeting. Now, I know Lindy puts a photo of someone next to her camera, so she's speaking with someone. It may not always work for everyone, but that's just one tip in enhancing eye contact. Also, I could tell when you were using notes or when you were using slides and there were words on the slides, then that bumped off eye contact. So what I might suggest to you going forward to strengthen that is to just use photos. A photo will say 1,000 words, and those are your photos. You know your story. That's where you speak from your heart, and it shows across the camera. So when you did that, that was excellent. What I'd like to also suggest to you is perhaps for your PowerPoint, just to enhance them perhaps more, is to remove the order of the slides on the side and just keep it to photos. They're very, very powerful with the photos. They really drew me in and they were visually strong and visually memorable. Perhaps you might want to consider that. But overall, your facial expressions were incredible. Your beautiful smile, that was my favorite part because your face really drew me in with you in your stories. You did that very, very well as your attire, which was a perfect match for this content and this speech, in my opinion. Thank you so much for your speech, and turning it over to Linda Wu for the vocal evaluation.
You, Sandra.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Karen, especially for the pleasant speech. I learned a lot from you. I really enjoyed it. You have a very clear communication style, volume-wise, excellent. I can always hear you. I can hear you clearly throughout the speech. And your tone was easy to understand, and your quality of a voice is pleasant, positive, and your articulation is very good. Your rate was relatively consistent, but you did speed up when you get excited, and you did slow down from time to time. So overall speaking, you have a very good communication style. So what would I recommend? I would recommend for character differentiation. For example, when you talk about your mother screamed, you can raise up your voice and scream, "Susie, what have you done?" Like this. And then when you scream, you can imitate a little girl screaming. And when your mother whispered to you, you can lean over, get closer to the camera and say, "You got to stop this. The sheriff's office is next door." So use this kind of techniques to differentiate characters. Overall speaking, this is a very good ice-breaking speech. I know much more about you. And I have a connection with you because I was also born in a world without electricity, without water. So thank you. I look forward to your next speech. Now I turn it over to Hazel for content evaluation.
Hey, Karen, I really enjoyed your snippet last week. And so when I saw hair-raising experiences, I thought, I think she's going to tell the whole story.
Yeah.
And you did. What I would suggest for you is that whole first minute is just kind of conversational, chatty. It's kind of warm-up time for you. I would try and do your warm-up off camera. So when you come in, you're ready to tell the story. Because now you kind of ended up on the other end, having it rushed and cut off because it ran long. So all of that about the slideshow and the screen sharing and never writing puns, that didn't do anything to move your story forward. So I would be starting with your story. You gave us a good setting of what life was like in Eureka, Kansas. But again, I think you could challenge yourself to make that a sentence or maybe two about farm to table, post-World War, third world life in a 3-generation family. I think you could succinct that. So again, and some of those pieces, I noticed that you gave us some very specific verbiage that would have called back an era. So Eva Boone's hair salon and Richard Hudnett, I've never heard of him. Rosie Riveter, my grandma was a Rosie Riveter, so that would have given me a concept of the time and the place. And of course, Audrey Hepburn. And when you sat on the Sears catalogs, I used to sit on Sears catalogs. My parents thought that was the ultimate high chair to boost you up to the table. So to have to sit on 3 of those to go to the hairdressers, that gave us a concept of you were a small child in a big girl's world in terms of getting your hair done. And then that contraption is enough to terrify anyone. You did a great job of setting the scene and of telling your story. I did think you warmed up quite a bit a few minutes in. So I would challenge you too on the nightmare experience. And then you went on and you said, when you were screaming and you had the stuff running down your face, that was the worst experience in my life. And then you said, but there were worse experiences. So that's a little confusing. And then you went on and you said, and the home perm was the worst thing in the world. So you might want to kind of figure out what that really is. Because pretty soon we're like, she just says that a lot, instead of really having clarity around which one that is. I noticed that you came up with a different takeaway than you did last time, which was interesting. And there are no bad hair days. You can optimize, accessorize, and you don't have to accept other people's ideas of beauty. So I think that the family dynamics that you presented were also very compelling and interesting. The sheriff's office next door, these are all kind of like things that up the ante in terms of the experience. But it was also very empowering how you got to an age where you were able to say, this is what I want, and that was cool. So I think you did a great job, but I think we could shorten up some of the parts that ran over so you'd have more time to really get in and tell your story in an impactful way. But thank you for showing us that piece of yourself.
Thank you to all our evaluators. We now have our round robin. All righty, so we have 5 minutes to do a round robin, and anyone who would like to talk to Karen about their speech. We'll start with Judith.
I like this story originally as the hair-raising experience. It didn't quite turn out to be a hair-raising experience, but I think, Karen, what would have been a great thing is to tell us a story. Not every speech needs a PowerPoint presentation. And I think this speech could have worked perfectly well, maybe one picture, and just tell us the story about what happened, what your life is, and just like you would tell another person about your life. And I think that would have worked for me a little bit better, but thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Anyone? Lindy.
Karen, I would just like to give, I would like to give you kudos for your courage. This is an advanced club. You have a birth date that does not necessarily go along with technical savviness, which is to say that it takes a lot of courage to jump in with PowerPoint. You jumped in and shared a personal story. You gave us your heart, and I want to thank you for all that courage.
Thank you.
Right.
You also had great aplomb when things did not go smoothly. It didn't phase you. You just flipped over. And the other thing I wanted to mention was you kept saying you went by Susie as a child. And I know it said Karen Sue, but I kept thinking, Susie, her name's Karen. So that was interesting.
Anyone else? All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and move on because I know we're kind of behind the 8 ball on our time here. So let's move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker today is Arun. I always have to look at this. Shivamurga Krishna. How'd I do? Okay, so first of all, let's start off by asking Arun if he can see the timer.
Yes, I can see the timer.
And we can hear you. So today, Arun is working on his, whoops. Oh, crap. Somehow I ended up in some horrible place. Okay. It all depends on what you click on. Okay, so Arun is working on his motivational strategies pathway, which is about writing a speech with purpose. So his speech title is Give Credit, Take Ownership. He is someone who is wanting to learn something new this summer, which is learning to swim. So please welcome Arun as he tells us about giving credit and taking ownership.
It was a cold winter afternoon in January 2009. US Airways Flight 1549 took off from New York, headed towards Charlotte. 2 minutes after takeoff, they were at an altitude of 2,800 feet. There were 155 people on board, including 5 members of the crew. A few minutes in, the passengers heard a loud bang. Some curious ones opened the window and saw that one of their engines was on fire. Few seconds later, they heard a second loud bang, and they could see that the second engine was on fire too. What had happened? Birds, technically a flock of geese, had hit the engines, and both the engines packed up. The co-pilot, Jeff Skees, was in complete control when the plane took off. Immediately after the engines caught fire, the captain signaled to the air traffic control, informing what had happened. They said, "Come back to where you took off from. We have cleared the strip for you to land." But the captain knew that the plane would not make it back that far. They momentarily even considered landing at the smallest strip in New Jersey, but the captain knew that the plane wouldn't even go there. He looked down and saw the densely crowded streets of Manhattan and knew that landing anywhere close by would lead to huge damages in person and property. He looked a little aside and immediately made up his mind to land on the River Hudson. Today, this incident is known as the Miracle of Hudson. All the 155 people on board were safely evacuated. The Captain Sullenberger, was the last to come out of this evacuation. But let me tell you one small thing that happened in this whole incident. Remember, I told you that the co-pilot was in command when the plane took off, but immediately when the engines caught fire, the captain took control. He just said 2 words at that point in time. He said, "My airplane." And the co-pilot took his hands off and said, "Your airplane." When all the 155 people came out alive, the media people interviewed Captain Sullenberger, and he said, "I thank everyone who helped in this effort. The people who helped us take all the passengers back to land, the ferry operators, the crew members, and my co-pilot. Everyone is someone I need to thank for this situation," is what he said. But Toastmasters, what do we get to learn from this situation? When there was a need, when the situation demanded, the captain just said 2 words, "My airplane," and took complete control. This is one very important leadership lesson that we all need to learn. When it matters, take ownership, take control. But when everything is good, give others the credit. If you're an ardent cricket fan, you would have definitely heard of the former Indian captain Mahendra Singh Dhoni, MSD as he is popularly known as. It is no surprise to any of us that when India used to win a trophy under his leadership, he used to always be on the sidelines while lifting the trophy. But when the team lost, he was the first person to come and give the interview about what bad happened during the game. It was the year 2011 when India was playing the World Cup final. And in such a high pressure, high tense game, we lost a couple of early wickets. MSD, who usually bats at number 6 or 7, came way up the order that day and made sure he played till the end and take the team to victory. What is one important lesson that we learn from this? When it matters, take ownership. Recently, we were at a team lunch at a very good restaurant. Upon being seated there, there was a sense of uneasiness among all the colleagues. It was due to some work that was happening nearby. The odor at the restaurant was not something we were all comfortable sitting in for a long time. Our manager consulted us and we decided to move to a nearby restaurant. But there was one colleague who was visually very tensed when this was happening. That colleague had helped with the reservation at this restaurant. And the thought that was going on in his mind was, how will I tell the staff as to what happened and why we are moving out? But immediately the situation changed. When we all got up, our manager walked towards the restaurant staff and told them as to what had happened and why we were leaving. The colleague who had done the reservation was visually relieved. This was one situation that I keenly observed. And what did we learn from the situation? When it matters, take ownership. Toastmasters, we are all leaders at the end of the day. We are all leaders in our own terms, and we are here to teach others the principles of leadership. To all leaders that I see in front of me, there are situations in our professional and personal lives wherein we can understand the true value of taking ownership. It not only teaches us good lessons, but also teaches us how to observe and learn from these situations when others are practicing it. Toastmasters, when it matters, take ownership. It teaches us a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun. Wonderful speech. I would now like to ask our timer to give us 2 minutes. So 2 minutes on the clock, please, timer. Thank you, Madam Timer. All righty, we're ready for our evaluations of Arun's speech. Lindy McLean will be doing the manual. The visual will be Elena Brenna. Vocals will be Abhijit Joshi. And content, Judith Ferber. So let's get started with Lindy.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Am I audible, Arun? Thank you. I changed microphones. It's so good to have you back. Your storytelling was missed. I'm glad to have you with us again. Your speech was a project about us. Giving a speech with purpose. Its purpose was to review basic methods for writing a speech with a purpose, to meet the expressed purpose, to meet the expressed purpose statement with a well-executed speech. The elements that I'm going to be talking about are related to that. First of all, when giving a speech with purpose, one's charisma comes into play, and you have wonderful charisma. You have great presence, your physical being and your eye contact communicate credibility and power, which I think feeds into a speech with purpose. You were working to persuade us of a certain point of view, and all that comes into play. You brought great clarity in pointing out the lesson to be learned. And your eye contact, also excellent, which again plays into being purposeful and into your credibility. A few questions I had, or possible things that might serve the purpose even more. It took me a long time to understand the relationship between the title and the story. You took us into a gripping situation, but it took me quite a while to figure out what does this have to do with credit and ownership. Even more than that, I feel that for me, what would help is to understand the problem. When you got toward the end of your speech, you started talking about leadership and taking ownership. For me, if you could begin with that, perhaps the challenge there, I mean, what is the problem that a leader has in regards to ownership? Are they taking it too much, not enough? What might they be experiencing that you're going to help us with? So that when you take us into the story, we already have a personal hook as to how you're going to help us. That would help me to be clear about the problem. And different ways of naming speeches, but naming it with the problem again might help clarify where you're going. Because you had not the one story, but more than one story. So it can't be called My Airplane. It can't be called Miracle of the Hudson, because you were talking about also the cricket player. So you did a good job with repeating what was the lesson. When it matters, take ownership. And I appreciated that. I see I've got red. Thank you for the speech, Arun. I'll hand it over to the next person, who is Elena Brenna with visual.
All right, good evening, fellow Toastmasters and Arun. Thank you very much for giving this speech this evening. I'm going to give you your visual evaluation. You took control of your space very well. You were in the screen, you were making good eye contact. All of these things were excellent. When you had good body language, a couple of times I noticed, for example, when you talked about taking Captain Sully said my plane, and you had the gestures that really made it look like a man taking control of his airplane. And at the same time, almost immediately thereafter, you showed the co-pilot kind of step back your plane. So those gestures, that body language matched exactly what you were talking about. You had good eye contact throughout the speech. And you also had another gesture that was good, but I have one suggestion about that gesture. When you talked about the loud bang, and you made this gesture, I'd like you to have that gesture come between loud and bang. So you say, and there was a loud bang. I think that would make it a little more effective, because you did that a couple of times. Do it that way each time would be my suggestion. I would also like you to find an opportunity or two to smile. Your facial expression was very much the same throughout your speech. It was not very expressive. So if there's an opportunity in the speech where you can smile when things go well, when they land the plane, or when your work colleagues were getting together and things were going well, let's have a smile at that point. And another suggestion I would make is that you seem to move a bit closer to the camera during the course of the speech. And towards the end, you were a little too close, so your gestures were getting lost. So I don't mind the moving back and forth, but come back so we can really see all the hand gestures that you're making so they can be taken in more effectively. So in summary, you had a lot of good things happening with the eye contact, with your gestures. I'd like to see you make some improvement there with the gestures of the bang, and also add some facial expression to give us more interest, because you really are framed there in the camera. So let's see a little more expressiveness in your face. But overall, excellent. The gestures matched what you were saying. The eye contact was very good throughout. And thank you very much for your speech, Arun. And now I'd like to bring on Abhijit with the vocal evaluation.
Arun, your speech reminded me of those images of that US Airways plane in the Hudson River. Thank you for sharing your story with us. There are so many good things about your speech, especially regarding the vocals. The first thing I want to say is the repetition of taking ownership. You repeated that few times, and that really put that on my mind, or put it on my brain, imprinted on my brain. So thank you for doing that. The second thing I really enjoyed was your volume change. When you said my airplane, that change in volume really conveyed the point you were trying to make. So that I felt that was very beautifully done. The one thing I really enjoy is your enunciation of the words. You take that time to pronounce each and every word precisely. So when I was not looking at your speech, and I was just listening to it, and I could understand each and everything you were saying. Things to make your speech more effective. The one thing I feel like what I noticed is I was paying attention to your first two stories. With the third story, I lost a little bit of my attention. And I was thinking, why is that? The one thing, the reason why I feel is if we can attach our emotions to what we are saying, that can make it very effective. Because sometimes what happens is then our cadence or the rhythm of speaking is the same when our emotions are not attached. So I will encourage you to attach your emotions to that. And I just want to briefly mention the 3 Ps, the pace, the pitch, and the pause. I felt overall you had a very consistent pace. So I would encourage you to vary that, because that will make it more interesting. Pitch, same thing, very consistent. Only I think the one time the pitch became high when you said my airplane, at that moment it changed dramatically. And pauses, I feel you can have more pauses in your speech, because then it gives us some time to grasp what you're saying and also draws the attention. To summarize, add more emotions and apply those 3 Ps of pitch, pace, and pauses. Things you did beautifully was the repetition. Take ownership, take ownership, take ownership. It imprinted on my brain. I loved the volume change when you said my airplane. And the best thing was the beautiful enunciation of words as you were speaking. Let me call upon Judith for content. Judith, it's all you.
Thank you, Arun. I love the stories, all 3 of them. And I had a feeling that this is going to be the miracle of a Hudson as it progressed the story. They were great stories. The thing that I would do with your story is the foundation phrase in your story is when it matters, take ownership. Now, this was when you start your story that it was a cold afternoon and there was the plane and that was this horrible thing happening of the fire engine and eventually the plane landed. But then it came to another story. So there is a transition situation that happens or did not happen for me. So my suggestion is, it's just my idea, is since this is your foundation, this is the main front of the story, is that we need to have courage. We take ownership when it matters. Is to say, what would our world be without these people? And then you have the three stories. And that is true. I had a problem understanding the second story because the pronunciation was, and there is one thing you need to slow down a little bit. And this is, I found this is kind of an Indian speaking, they speak very fast. You need to slow down a little bit. But that's what I would do. But I love the three stories. And I think what is really made the speech more effective is to combine the story and to say, what would we be if that Sallenberger, okay, and not everybody can actually do this, but he certainly done phenomenally well, saved all these people, and it's scary. And then you can always say, I can imagine how these people would feel, 155 people, what is going to happen to their lives. And there was the courage of this man. And then the games, and then the restaurant. And then it comes together that what you are saying is that all these different point requires leadership to step up when it matters. So that's what I would do. I would make this at the beginning and put the story into the whole thing and then end this. And that is true. The idea, the thing that you said, that when it matters, take ownership, it was important that you said it and you said it at the end, because that is the main foundational of your story. And thank you very much for it.
Thank you, Judith. All right. So now we're going to do our round robin. Have we anyone who would like to make a comment to preferably something that hasn't been mentioned at this point? Anyone? Oh, Vivian. All right. Good to see you.
Thank you. And thank you for the warm welcome. Arun, I have many friends who are pilots. You know what I would have loved to see and hear from you? I would have loved if you were having a conversation with me over a bottle of beer. That's what pilots do after a tough day, really. You're a very bright boy, and I'm raising a beer bottle and giving you a challenge that you can take. Share your heart. Share your stress. Share your relief. And share your concern for the lives of the people. How would you share it? Over a bottle of beer, like, man, I wanted your heart, Arun. I know it's there. And the challenge for you is to tell it. People have heard me say this before. Record it, because that's what happens when we're having conversations over beer. We're intent on hearing the story. I know presentation mastery is a pathway. And yet, this is just my take on this as a TV director. Presentation is telling. It is one way. Sharing your heart is a skill. That's how you capture the mind. My message to you and everyone in the room: challenge the mind, touch the heart, and tickle the funny bone. I love you, Arun.
All right, Sandra.
Thank you. And thank you, Arun, for your speech, which was clearly excellent for Toastmasters leadership and in the general public on leadership. If I may suggest a visual tip, if we look at leaders, and I've studied color and also what it means in terms of attire when I was doing professionalism trainings, teaching them. And what I'd like to suggest to you, a very strong color portraying leadership, particularly for men, is blue. And if to ramp this up a notch visually, particularly I think it'd be appropriate in Toastmasters audiences, if you go on a big stage, then certainly a jacket with it, would be to wear a blue shirt, business casual, button-down collar, long sleeves. And that's, I think Abhijit's doing that tonight. But if look online, watch the news and see what the male leaders of the world, and I'm speaking about America right now, are wearing. And that will really give you a strong clue of color for men to wear when they're speaking on leadership and how to dress. So thank you so much. I think that might help visually if you might consider it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Hazel.
Hey, Arun, I just want to say that when you were telling the story of the airplane going down, I was riveted. I was very engaged. So I think the telling of it definitely captured my attention and my sympathy and my concern. So I think that was wonderful. I don't know if you need 3 illustrations. It's possible that there's more juice in that one. I love the way that you use the repetition to say when it matters, take ownership, give the credit, take the blame. I recently heard someone say, take 100% responsibility for your results, which is more of a personal thing and a leadership thing. And I just wanted to say in your intro, I heard you were learning to swim and I kept thinking there was going to be something about swimming. So maybe put something in your intro that relates so that I'm not left with that string dangling, excited for you, but not seeing where it fits in. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. Malcolm. Welcome.
Thank you, Arun. Nice delivery. I liked how you used the rule of 3 by sharing with us 3 powerful, insightful stories while emphasizing your main message, which is in critical conditions, take ownership. Please consider the following. Shorten your introduction to draw in your audience with, for instance, asking us a question like, do you take ownership in critical situations? And then transition to your 3 powerful stories. Well done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Malcolm. It looks like we have run out of time for this and we are at break time. Lindy, let's see. I'm looking at the time, 7:30, and we're right on time again now. So let's take a 5-minute break and come back for our third speaker. So it is now 7:39 on my clock. So let's be back by 7:44.
Malcolm, where are you visiting us from?
I am zooming in from a slice of paradise in the Caribbean, an island called Bonaire.
Lovely. Lovely. So nice to have you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about yourself in Toastmasters or in other ways.
Sorry?
Tell us about yourself in Toastmasters or outside of Toastmasters. I just want to know about you.
Okay, so I am a Toastmaster for a few years already. And one thing I love about this era of Toastmasters, because of the pandemic, Zoom became so popular. So now I can virtually travel around the world. So I'm not confined to a Caribbean island.
Not only that, you'll have friends everywhere. So when you do travel, you can visit them.
Exactly. And I really like the warm welcome I receive and also feeling at home in this club. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, well,
Thank you.
have you with us.
Alice, where are
Can
you from?
Lindy, can you make your sound a little bit higher?
Besides mute button, there's a up arrow, and when you click audio settings, you can take the mic volume very high.
Yeah, it just needs a little higher, the volume. It's hard to hear you sometimes.
Is this too low? Can you hear me now?
Yes, this is good.
That's 0 decibels, so I think it's as high as it goes.
Okay.
Okay.
No, it's also from the Zoom window also. Can you do it on the Zoom?
No, there's no controls by Zoom on the
Oh no,
mic.
besides the mute button, there is an up arrow. Click that, I'll show you. Okay, when you click that, click audio settings. Okay, and when you click audio settings, you see microphone volume, input volume, and you can raise that volume.
The slider, Wendy.
It seems to be grayed out. Oh, wait, maybe, let's see. It seems to be grayed out. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, if it's grayed out still, you can move it. Can you move it? I can
No,
move it from
I
my
don't
side.
think so.
Okay, no worries.
It says it's automatically adjusting. Maybe I should.
Oh, no, no, you can remove the automatic. I just
Yeah, take that off.
take that off, and then you can do it manually.
There we go.
Perfect. Hello,
If I
Alice.
pound really
Huh?
hard at it, it might work. Well, I move it and then it pops back to where it was. So is that any louder? No, not really, is it? No.
We can hear you good.
I can hear you. It's not great, but
I'm sorry.
So
Alice.
Alice,
Yeah.
we have a guest. Alice, can you unmute yourself and just let us know where you're from or if you're a Toastmaster or not?
Singapore, she is from. Singapore.
Singapore. My goodness.
That's
Another one a long way from home for us.
She can speak.
What's the time in Singapore there, Alice?
Oh, it's 10:43 a.m. So just check that.
Yeah.
Oh.
She said she can only listen. She can speak.
Okay. I couldn't. My chat disappeared. I had to figure out how to get the chat back here. I know. The cat stepped on the button.
Zoom.
All right.
I hate it when
It's now 7:44, so let's get back to it and get started with our third speaker. And today, our third speaker is Lindy McLean. And I think, oh, there it is. Okay. Today, our third speaker is working from her Team Collaboration Path Level 2, Understanding Your Leadership Style. The purpose of this project is to identify your primary leadership style or styles. However, having done this project several times before, our speaker is taking a new approach. Have you considered what kind of leader you are in your own life? How do you navigate day-to-day decisions? What is your driving motivation? Is it possible that you steer by fear? Sharing this truth in her own life with her speech entitled Leading from Fear, please welcome Lindy McLean.
I'm in 10th grade. I'm new to town, and I have the haircut from hell. It's supposed to be a Dorothy Hamill, a cute little wedge, but they have left me with a cliff up here on my skull that drops off onto sheer bare neck. I have no hat that will cover this monstrosity, unless it's perhaps a ski mask. I have to skulk down the high school hallways to jeers and laughter. I might as well have tattooed across my forehead, reject. Do you choose, say, and do, filtered through the fear of losing love? If I say that, she won't like me. If I do that, he won't love me. If I choose that, they'll reject me. For me, love and approval are like food and water. I remember at 4 years old, working really hard so that I could bathe in the warmth of my mother's approval. I cleaned my room. Only once in my life have I chosen to risk love on purpose, when I got my divorce. It was the right choice for me, but facing my grandmother's sharp disappointment and society's disdain, I felt like I had swallowed lie, and it was burning holes in me from the inside. Not the right way to be holy. At 38, my life really was a series of compromise. And I thought that's how grown-up adults behave. The only area that I was really delighted with was my new relationship, and I only had to drink lie to get it. That's a lot of risk. About this same time, my mother turned 60 and transformed her life. She went from being my mom, who bicycles across town, to being the cross-country cyclist Wonder Woman. Whoa, if she can do that. I set about proving myself, which is how my partner and I found ourselves bicycling from Seattle to San Francisco. You've heard of the hills of San Francisco, those steep ones? Well, they roll up and down over and over all the way along the coastline, all 800 miles. And my muscles screamed through every incline. By the time we reached Crescent City, California, I was ready to give up. On the way into town, we had flat tires. Our motel that night was tiny and smelled of mold. The whole city really felt like the air had been let out of it, much like the rest of my life. The next morning, cycling up the long incline to get to the redwood forest, I thought, if I can do this that I really don't care very much about, imagine if I really went for my dreams. What if I made the choice just for me? Forget about losing love. We reached the Golden Gate Bridge, cycled across, took a victory photograph, and took off for the airport. At home, I set about applying for graduate school's acting programs. Finally, I am going to be a professional actor. Auditions follow the applications, and then I wait for the good news of my new life. The letters come in, and I read, reject, loser, talentless fool. That's the way it felt. It wasn't just that I'd failed at my dearest dream. It was like a personal message from the divine saying, sorry, kid, Usually I give dreams to people that they can fulfill, but for you, sorry. I had become a heavenly joke. And I fell into that dark chasm reserved for the unlovable. Not long after, someone gifted me a Reiki energy healing treatment. I'm lying on my back on the massage table. My head is cradled in the hands of the practitioner. And it feels like there's liquid love pouring over me. My eyes fill with tears. Those tears roll down and fill my ears because I realize that it isn't that the divine doesn't love me. It's that I cannot love myself. I hear a voice. Let the love in. Fill up your heart. Then take the next risk. That is your part. Who knew the divine speaks in rhyming couplets? Let the love in, take the next risk. Learning to love myself is as simple and as difficult as letting in the love from family, from friends, from strangers, from animals, from the ocean, from trees. Yes, I am a tree hugger. Bit by bit, I learn to take it in. And as I do, my courage and my hope begins to renew, and I can take the next risk and the next one. I stumble on to a new stage and experience unimagined success. And best of all, my circle of love gets wider and wider. Each day I get to reach, to let the love in, take the next risk. What about you? Do you let the fear of losing love keep you from risking your dreams? Your dream might not come true, but there is a way to stay whole, to keep risking, to keep dreaming, to lead from the heart, so that you can say, choose, and do without fear of losing love. Let the love in, take the next risk. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Lindy. I'm ready. Okay. Here are our Oh, first we need 2 minutes. So, Madam Timer, 2 minutes, please. All right, thank you, Madam Timer. The 2 minutes is up. Okay, our evaluators for Lindy will be Abhijit Joshi with the manual, Sandra Kolb with the visual, Linda Wu, vocals, and content is Hazel Booth. Be sure to introduce the next evaluator. Go for it, Abhijit.
Lindy, your speech reminded me of last week when my friends asked me to come for biking where there were just rolling hills about 5,000 feet. And I was like, no, it's too much for me. There's so many good things about your speech, but here are a few of them. The first thing I really enjoyed was how you transported me to that motel. The description of the motel was such that I just felt that I was there with you. Another thing I enjoyed was the way you had the God's voice. It brought the humor and it immediately released that tension. So that's something which really stood out for me. As you were doing Reiki in your speech, you used the phrase liquid love. And that's something I've never heard of. And the more I started thinking about the way you described in your situation, it connected with me. So that was something very different. To make your speech effective, here are a few things I felt. The first thing, in first 2 minutes, I was thinking, okay, where is this speech going? So it was not giving me that direction. Okay, where is it going? The second thing I felt is your speech goes like this. The climax comes at the very end. So there is a lot of the climax doesn't start going up as you start from the speech. So that's something which I will encourage you to start building up the climax as you are starting your speech. One thing I would like to encourage you, if you can include us early on in your speeches as you are going with it, I think that will make it very, very effective. I think the best thing was let the love in, because sometimes I feel I don't love myself very much, and that's a very strong message. To recap, to make your speech more effective, if you can let us know where you are going with the speech, that will make it very effective. I would encourage you to start building the climax as you start your speech and get us included with that you in your speech. Things you did very effective was your descriptive language, the voice of God, and the use of phrase, the liquid love. And the best thing was your message, let the love in. It will always stay with me. Let me call upon our next evaluator.
Sandra Kolb is the next evaluator for visuals.
Thank you so much, Abhijit, and thank you, Lindy, for your visually strong feast. I loved your visual presence, your attire, your use of demonstration, your use of props, gestures, body language, facial expression were all extremely strong. That's definitely an exceptional skill of yours to match your body, face, and gestures with the content and with the emotion of your speech. So those were just all exceptional. To point out right at the very beginning, you drew me out with the cliff of the hair and the ski mask. I knew that we were going somewhere with this speech. Oh my goodness. So when you had more personal moments from your heart, you came up close and personal on the screen. And you even lowered your voice at that point, but just being up close and personal visually at those memorable, very strong, poignant, and content-rich parts of your speech are exceptionally done visually as well. And I'd like to point out how well you did that at the closing to make that memorable in your personal message to me, being in your audience. If I may become a bit nitpicky visually, thank you, Lindy. There was one point where I felt that perhaps gestures might have an opportunity to be demonstrated a bit more when you said reject, loser, talentless, fool. I'd like to see you visually become smaller, smaller, and smaller. Perhaps shrink yourself back into the background or become lower and lower in the depth of your screen. You said that very slowly. It was strong and pause, but I thought in terms of gestures, that might be one way to even make that more emotionally powerful, because as you do it, you're feeling yourself become smaller, smaller, and smaller. Another nitpicky point might be at the point where you said stumble or trip. Maybe just physically do a bump there to match that point of stumbling or tripping. It was further into your speech. I've lost the context right now, but I do remember there was an opportunity for that. And one more nitpicky point would be your business professional attire. The jacket and a white shirt are always what I would consider a business formal presence. In terms of leadership and a big stage, speaking on the topic of leadership is very strong. What someone said in professionally speaking many, many years ago to me, when I was on a stage in front of audience like that, was to soften it a bit, to make it appear more friendly and less cold. She's still a member of this club after all these many years, and I'd never forgotten that. I'm not so much a scarf person, but sometimes I've worn a scarf between my shirt and my jacket, so there'll just be a peak of color. Or maybe you could apply a brooch or Toastmasters bling on your lapel, or even an artificial flower or something, you know, and it could even be done with a necklace. But that was something she said to me that I took to heart, and she was so right in the end. So thank you. Overall, of course, very strong physical presence, exceptional, and just those couple nitpicky tips that might visually enhance your speech a bit more for me. Bringing on now Linda Wu for the vocal evaluation.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Lindy, especially for this wonderful speech and also inspiring story. Now for your vocals, excellent articulation. Even when your voice is soft, I can still hear you clearly. You have a pleasant voice with a quality tone and pitch. It's always a pleasure and also always impressive to listen to. There are many good examples. I will just list some of them that you articulated very well. For example, cross-country cyclist Wonder Woman cycling the long incline, victory photograph. Finally, I'm going to be the professional actress. Sorry, kid. Usually I give dream to kids, but there are many, many good examples that we can all learn from you. Then about the areas for improvement, I would like to give you two advice for your consideration. First, for your foundation phrase, let love in, take the next risk. I know that you repeated at least 3 times, but I had to write it down to notice it. So my suggestion for the foundation phrase is that maybe you can inject some emotion or energy into this. Then we will be more impressive. We will be more impressed by this foundation phrase. Another suggestion is maybe you can have some dialogue in this speech. In this speech, you have the God speaking to you, but other than that, you don't have much dialogue. So that's my personal suggestion for your consideration. Overall speaking, this is another masterpiece for us to learn from. Thank you. I look forward to your next speech. Now I pass it on to our content evaluator, Hazel.
Hey, Lindy, I think you're well on your way to your next speech, next qualifying contest speech. So I already tuned in your introduction with that phrase, do you steer by fear? I love that. The alliteration piece and the visual piece was very strong. I counted 5 different story scenarios that you shared snippets of that gave us a glimpse into what life was like. So there was the 10th grade haircut from hell. I thought that your animated expression of that with the explanation of the cut, the skulking jeers, the ski mask prop, those were all very effective. I did have a lot of trouble. I had to strain because my thing didn't pick up your voice very well on my end. So that was something you'd want to make sure you're powerful on. When you did the reject forehead tattoo, and then further on, when you talked about the rejection from the acting school, that was a good circling around how you mirrored those. The fear of losing love and how its likeness to food and water is essential. Then you had the 4-year-old was the second one, where you're bathing in the warmth of your mother's approval for cleaning your room. I love the image of swallowing lie, and you were very clever there too when you said this was not the right way to be holy, having this burning from the inside. I thought that was very clever, and then you carried it over and you said, and I got into a new relationship, but I had to drink lie to do it. And so the image of that I think was very powerful. The 4th one was the cross-country cyclist, where you're trying to keep up and outperform your mother to prove yourself. And again, that was a punishing experience. The letting out the air, I again lost a little bit to the verbiage there, but how you were beginning to get an insight that maybe you could work this hard for something you cared about versus something you were just trying to prove yourself worthy over. Then there was the grad school piece where you went in with excitement and you had the reject, the talentless fool, great verbiage, the image from the divine, heavenly joke, all really great. And the dark chasm reserved for the unlovable. So I feel like you brought in a lot of different reinforcements, like this is clearly what you're getting out of, what you're making it mean when these things happen in your life. And then the Reiki treatment was your turning point, where there was liquid love, and you had a realization that it was me not loving myself. So then the 4 phases, let the love in, fill up your heart, take the next risk. That is your part. And I like the reference to the couplets with the divine. That was the beginning of the healing. Then you referenced the courage and hope to begin anew and stumbling onto a new stage, which if you're speaking to Toastmasters, I felt like that's a Toastmasters is where you're experiencing this unexpected success. You talked about the circle of love widening, but you came here and you mentioned staying whole. And I really feel like all of the expressions and the stories that you've told up till now, you've sort of bartered away a little piece of yourself in order to feel worthy. And so I think the staying whole could be magnified a little bit more. And when you talk about each of these pieces and these stories, it could be a place to say, and I got a little, like what Sandra talked about, getting smaller. It's not just in one instance, it's in every single one of these. There was a reason for you to feel less than, less worthy, less sufficient. And so then, the CTA for the rest of us to be able to learn from what you've gone through, to evaluate our own lives and to learn to live without the fear of losing love, then we can be whole. I think you have an excellent material for a speech, and I'm excited to hear it again. Thanks.
Thank you, Hazel. All right, we're ready to have our round robin. So is there anyone who would like to give some feedback to Lindy? I'm not seeing everyone, so I've got to get gallery. Okay. Judith, please go right ahead.
I love the speech. But what I actually would have liked to have a little more to it, because I love the liquid love. It is actually quite wonderful. Is the liquid love with the empty heart. And then the idea is that, I mean, to me, the foundation phrase for this whole entire story could be that if the divine doesn't love me, I cannot love myself. Or if I cannot love myself, I cannot love anything or anyone. And that's what happens with this image of which I would just do a little more with this liquid love, which is such a wonderful phrase, actually. And I can just see it and work with it, how this goes into and how you actually ultimately develop this, because love only works if your heart is in it, and your heart cannot be in it unless you feel it and you are fully in it. It's a great idea. As Hazel said, I think this could be a even better speech, and I see so many wonderful aspects of it that could make this into a powerful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Malcolm.
Thank you. Lindy, I liked how you effectively use your virtual stage by moving side to side, back and forth. And I also liked how you use appropriate gestures and align them with your specific talking point at each given moment. For instance, hugging that tree as a tree lover. As improvement, please consider increasing the volume of your device so I can hear you clearer, especially when you were lowering your volume. And also, as you were saying, I stumbled onto a new stage. You were moving backwards. I would have liked to see you try stumbling without falling, of course, to better align with what you were saying at that moment. Loved your speech. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Arun.
Lindy, when I joined Toastmasters, my previous mentor always used to say, non-verbal communication is as effective as verbal communication when delivering a powerful speech. And today you just proved that over and over again. So great job on that. Your gestures were wonderful. Just one small nitpick, if I have to say, when you were mentioning about your mother initially going on, local bike riding trips and then doing a cross country, you changed directions, if you recall. And when you went the first direction, when you were saying that she just used to do local, or rather in city bike riding trips, you went a little too close to the edge of the screen. So that is something you might want to note. But overall, loved your speech. Such a powerful message. I'm pretty sure this speech will be received very well by everyone. So great job on it.
Anyone else? I do have a comment. Lindy, I loved it as usual. Very powerful. As everybody has said, some wonderful things about the choice of words and that kind of thing. The thing that struck me that you might want to think about is that this is about leadership, and that you are leading from fear, but you never bring that back around. What are you leading with now? Lead with love, lead with confidence, but I think it would be more powerful if you could bring it back to the leading with fear, because you named it that, but then you never talked about that again. So you might want to consider that. All righty. That we do not have a general evaluator tonight. I'm wondering if there's anyone that would like to make some comments about, we could do sort of a round robin of general evaluation. So let's start with our guests. Malcolm, can you tell us what you liked about the meeting or anything that you think we could do to improve it?
Thank you. Wow, so many stuff I loved about the meeting. I love the format. I love that the evaluations are in depth and layered. And I also like the round robin. Not only does it give the speakers extra evaluations, it also provides everyone an opportunity for them to speak, which is very important during our Toastmaster meetings. I love the energy. I love the high quality of the speeches. And I also like that the agenda was thrown into the chat. So the guests like myself could follow the meeting.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. I don't know if Alice can speak right now or not. Alice, if you'd like to come on, just unmute yourself. If not, we'll move on to another guest.
Can't speak.
She can't speak. Okay. So Mario, do you have any suggestions?
Not really. I wish I could add something, but phenomenal speeches, all three of them.
All right.
Even this is a feedback without feedback.
All right. Done with you, level
All right.
2 yet?
Petra.
Back to you.
Thank you. Petra.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I came in late, but not too late to catch two wonderful speeches. I love so much Arun's speech, especially because I had been working with the airline for 26 years, but I've never heard my airplane before. The only thing I heard is my control, and I had goosebumps when I heard my aeroplane, because that is more than my control. So thank you very much. I think your speech was very touching, and I love Lindy's speech, just for the fact that it's relatable. You've got yourself, your mom, your partner, just from the beginning of your speech, and it drew me in. So congratulations. And I also love all of your evaluations, everybody. I was so touched by Sandra's evaluation, especially for Lindy. Why? Because 4 years ago, at the age of 70, I went back to get my master's degree in speech communication, and the subject I loved best was message design. And in speech, people design everything except the attire and the color. And I love the way Sandra gave all of us wonderful tips. I love your meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Petra. All right. Do any of our members have anything to say about the meeting? We have another 30 seconds or so. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say? Lindy.
I'm always saying how much value this club offers, and once again, you did not disappoint. I'm trying to finish this level 2 so I can give it to our club. And this is the basis for my I'm working on a next contest speech. So thank you for all the input and all the help. I'm not sure if it's about leadership or not, but I was trying to fill that this time. Anyway, what I want to say is thank you for the consistently high level of evaluation. It is so valuable as a speaker. Thank you.
All right. I think that we've run out of time. So it's now time to hear from our timer. Get a timer's report on how everyone did.
Good evening, thank you, Madam
you.
Toastmaster. I'm a visiting Toastmaster from Bremerton 63. We meet on Tuesday nights. I'm also the area director, so this is not an official visit, but I always enjoy being here. And I especially enjoy being here because the last few times that I've been here were on your second meeting of the month. So I've missed the 4 evaluations for each speaker, and it just refreshed me to hear this. Now, I do have some news for the timing report. Karen, you gave 3 icebreaker speeches with the total time of 12 minutes and 47 seconds. Congratulations on your 3 speeches. For your evaluators, Abhijit, for the manual, 244, Sandra, for the visual, 311, Linda, for the vocal, 211, and Hazel rounded it out with the content of 319. The round robin was cut short for 1 minute and 52 seconds. Our second speaker, Arun, 7 minutes on the dot. Very well done, sir. You have a little bit more time to play with that. For your evaluators, the manual for Lindy, 3 minutes and 19 seconds. Elena had the visual evaluation for 3 minutes and 5 seconds. Abhijit, vocal, 2 minutes and 50 seconds. For the content, Judith rounded out with 3 minutes and 10 seconds. The speaker, our third speaker, Lindy, 5 to 7 minutes was the time frame that you were looking for at 7:41, ma'am. Just over. For the evaluations, Abhijit has a time that he likes to stick to because his manual evaluation was 2 minutes and 44 seconds. The same time for the first manual evaluation. Very well done, sir. Sandra, for her visual, was 4 minutes and 21 seconds. She had a lot of advice to give, and she was very nitpicky on this part. Linda, for the vocal, was 2 minutes and 21 seconds. And Hazel, not to be bested tonight, was 4 minutes and 15 seconds with her content evaluation. The round robin was 5 minutes on the dot, and the general evaluation was 4 minutes and 43 seconds. That is my timer report. If you have any questions, Elena kept me honest because poor Lindy, I apologize. We didn't throw up the green card until 5:28 because I was so vested in you being a loser. I was so moved with that. And Elena says, "Are you timing?" So not showing well. So this is always a skill set. This is the worst job that I find, or worst role that I find Toastmasters has, is being the timer, because it doesn't allow you to really listen and be engaged. But I do appreciate stretching the muscle. And some of us have some time to spare, and some of us are time eaters, myself included. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Joanna, for stepping up and helping us out and jumping into that role that is so detestable to you. All right. I am now going to turn this meeting back over to our president, Abhijit Joshi.
Thank you so much. Before we end, we want to announce a couple of things which are coming in. We have a special workshop coming in June. Lindy, you want to tell about it?
As you speak, I realize I am remiss and don't have the registration link right in my head. Huh.
We can't hear you.
Anyway, it's Abhijit Joshi. Now, if all of you who have received value from Abhijit in our district, in District 101, wherever you've encountered them, because he is a powerful leader and always leads from the heart. He's been working on a keynote, and it's called the Well-Loved Leader. He's been working on it for a while, and he's working on adding some skill sets that don't come as easily to him. So I really encourage you to come, bring people you know who know him to help contribute to how he can improve it, because this is going to be a keynote that is going to take the world by storm, and we want to help him make it that way. So that's 2 weeks from tonight, same time.
Abhijit, can you repeat this?
Yes, yes. So Judith, I'm giving a keynote in 2 weeks. The topic is the well-loved leader. It's a work in progress, so I would love feedback from everyone so that I
Okay.
can take it to the next level. In the month of July, we are planning improv. I'm still waiting on confirmation from our speaker, Richard. As soon as I get it, we will announce it. Linda, anything from you before I end the meeting?
That's all. We're all of us looking forward to your workshop, The Well-Loved Leader.
Thank you so much, Linda. See you everyone in 2 weeks at same time, 6:30 p.m. Pacific on June 15th. This meeting is adjourned.
Great. Lindy, one question. Did you